everyone and welcome back to AustinPlus, where today we are doing a review I had no intention of doing. I will be completely honest with you. Yes, today we are talking about the Odyssey movie, and we are about to set sail across the wide dark sea and brave through the wrath of gods, because Christopher Nolan has brought Homer's legendary epic to life on a grand scale, but does this amazing 70mm IMAX myth actually deliver a worthy story? Or does this 10-year Voyager leave us lost at sea? So yes, today we are talking about my personal thoughts on the Odyssey. I've seen it twice, and I was going to go and see it a third time, but however, the first time was a flipping roller coaster, and I'll get more into detail about that. But as I said, I had no intention of doing this, but it is a phenomenal film. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, obviously typical criteria is best characters. The first one is obviously Matt Damon as Odysseus. Amazing character development. I mean, I haven't read the story. I really want to now, but the story, as much as it's a film of a story that is told thousands of years ago, it is an amazing interpretation. Matt Damon grounds the legendary king of Ithaca with careworn, haunting vulnerability that transforms the mythic strategist into a deeply human survivor of war. Nolan does also leverage Damon's natural charisma to anchor this film's narrative. I mean, showing a man stripped of his pride through endless trauma before regaining his home. And his performance does strike a balance between cold tactical intelligence and emotional devastation. And I think this makes Odysseus' long journey home feel fiercely personal to him, as he went through so much, and obviously we'll get more into those scenes. But the character development for the Odysseus, and having Matt Damon do it no less, is insane. Right, I need to move my chair quickly. And I think that is why it's been done so well. I think that's not what many people are giving a lot of credit for. Next is Penelope. Didn't get a lot of screen time, I would say. Anne Hathaway as Penelope was definitely a great portrayal. Very fierce, I definitely wouldn't want to come across her. I think I would get... Anne Hathaway definitely delivers a powerhouse portrayal of Penelope, commanding the screen with very quiet resilience amongst the corruption over at Ithaca and all of the suitors. And rather than playing a passive waiting queen, Hathaway embodies Penelope with sharp political cunning views as she fends off the treacherous suitors in a very high stakes game of psychological chess. That's what it felt like to me. It was like, oh, what's this pawn gonna do? What's this pawn gonna do? Oh, is that knight gonna come through? It was just like psychological chess. That's why I like that term because that's what this whole film is, minus the travels at sea. Her emotional depth, and particularly when she is reunited with Odysseus at the end of the film, does serve as true moral heart of the entire epic. Many people try to fuck this character over. However, it did not work. She stayed loyal for 20 years, and Odysseus did end up coming back, even though many people thought he was dead. I mean, yeah, it makes sense, but she hung on to love, and it absolutely worked. And honestly, well on for that. Now, the other character is I think it's Benny Savdi. Apologies if I've butchered the name. As Agamemnon. How is a character that had 4 minutes of screen time, barely any vocal or scripture or anything, how did he do the most aura farming in this fucking film? Can someone explain that? His the actor's chilling authoritarian presence as Agamemnon was he was wearing a stark, imposing helmet that visually enforces the grim cost of military ambition. That suit is amazing, and his scenes definitely establish the dark backstory of the Trojan War. He is technically a villain, and he does highlight how the arrogance of Greek commanders set the tragic events of the story in motion of Homer's Odyssey. Now, I would say the actor's performance, very brief. I want to make that very clear. He had 4 minutes and 12 seconds. It was documented. 4 minutes and 12 seconds was so impactful, like in screen time, and it gives that narrative a very looming sense of doom, like making Agamemnon a striking symbol of ruthless power. Now, this is what I think the irony comes in. In all the promotional posters, it was basically him. And then the final trailer they released before the film was obviously Odysseus. Everyone was like, yeah, no, Agamemnon looks better. You're right, he does. He had less than, as I said, 5 minutes in the film. And I think that is, like, horrendous. But he is a cool character. He had barely any words. The way he died, valid. Now, this is my final character, and this one holds a personal, this one's very personal because I hated him. Now, I like the actor. The actor did a fantastic job at playing this character. I would say the main villain, obviously, but I hated him. And I do think people are going to hate Robert Pattinson now because of what he's done, and obviously he's doing a couple villain roles now. But Robert Pattinson as Antinous was... Oh, I hated him. He turns Antinous into a brilliantly sleazy and yet terrifying villain. I wouldn't go with terrifying. I'll scratch that off the list now. And it does capture the arrogance of, like, the nobleman who believes that Ithaca is already his. It's already his. He's channeling a sinister, very unpredictable energy. He has that type of vibe. He is very reminiscent of the classic crime antagonist that we all get. And obviously, Pattinson does make every interaction with Telemachus Penelope definitely feel charged with danger. And also, I am gunning for your job. I want the kid dead, and I want to marry you. He has some ruthless ambition, I would say. And this does establish him as the ultimate foil to, obviously, Odysseus' legacy, ensuring that his eventual reckoning carries maximum thematic weight. Bearing in mind, this is the guy that was saying, oh, I was supposed to set sail, yet was too terrified to go. And I think that's the irony, is that I hated him. I hated his character, but that's how you know the actor played him very, very well. Now to the best moments. There are 3 that stand out to me. Like 3 of the major ones that people are talking about on social media. There are 3 that stand out to me, and then the other 2 are just personal favorites of mine. Now, the first one is, and I can give some personal history of how this went in the cinema. Now, the Cave of Polyphemus. So Christopher Nolan captures this entire encounter with Polyphemus through a jaw-dropping practical scale of IMAX 70mm immersion, grounded by a terrifying mix of animatronics and shadow work rather than generic CGI, because we all know, fuck CGI. Matt Damon's frantic improvised tactic to blind the giant is filmed with definitely claustrophobic intensity. I was definitely shriveled up into a ball that whole time. And it transforms that classic mythological into a pulse-pounding survival thriller. I like, that whole sentence was literally me. The sequence reaches its peak as Odysseus screams his false name, Nobody, perfectly setting up the tragic weight of the hubris that curses the rest of the journey home when he, obviously, for those who do not know, Polyphemus is the son, or one of the 70 sons, I think, of Poseidon, and he was calling out to Poseidon in that very scene, and that when Poseidon went, fuck you. So, I would say, this scene was definitely, set sail to absolute intensity. But this scene, I had no idea it was a thing. I went to go and see this 2 days after it came out. I had no clue about it. I wanted to go to the cinema, so I was like, fuck it, we'll go and watch the Odyssey. Apparently, that I've heard very good things. Now, if you go on an app, it says action, adventure, something, I think drama, something like that. Don't get me wrong, fair enough. Add in horror. This shit's horror, because I jumped so many times the first time I watched it. Now, this kind of brings me on to my next point. This next scene, I've only seen it fully once, and anyone in the comments can go and say that, oh, you're scaredy cat, blah, 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 blah. Fair enough, I am. But the pig transformation, I hate body horror. And I had to walk out of the cinema for a bit before, and I just came back as Odysseus went into the little cottage and saw Circe. But the confrontation on Circe's island showcases Nolan at his most surreal, like using unsettling practical makeup and disorienting camera. That depicts the physical horror of turning men into pigs. And any other thing for that. Instead of leaning on flashy digital tricks, the transformation unfolds through a haunting montage of body horror. Now, I hate that. The second time round, I was able to watch it. It's not that bad. The build-up is so much worse because you know it's coming. It stands out as a stark, narrative shift exposing how easily the trauma of war strips away humanity long before physical monsters actually ever intervene. This is one of the things that it's not a monster, it's a witch. And there's definitely a few monsters in here, don't get me wrong. But this one hit a personal nerve. Now, onto the production side of this shit. You are telling me that they used animatronics to do that scene? No CGI? Are you okay? There's me thinking I had problems, but okay. Now, next scene is the sirens. The siren scene, I really like this, mainly because of the music. Nolan definitely obviously reimagined the sirens, not as a literal sea monster, but as a deeply psychological trial, and that's why this scene is so well made. Where the deadly songs that manifest an auditory, existential, breakdown, it bound tightly to the mast of his ship. Odysseus is forced to obviously confront localized acoustic illusions and auditory visions of his past failures, turning a famous fable into an agonizing mental interrogation. This scene, you could see the emotion, the most annoyance and stuff, and he was just like, you know what, you're gonna have to go past the siren bit, you're gonna lose one person. He was like, I think it's gonna be me, so maybe tie me to the ship, I want to hear it. Obviously wasn't him that he lost. But the sound design during this sequence is arguably the highlight of the entire film, using intense sheer frequency that pull the audience directly into Odysseus' fractured mind, the silence, and then you can see his mate, the other, I don't know the name, there's so many names in this, I'm surprised I've memorized this much, but the guy that he was closely with on that boat could see the struggle and everything, and you could see it through his eyes. It was fantastically directed. I don't think people give this film enough credit for that. Some people don't like it, sure enough. This might not be for you. The first time I watched it, I was bloody traumatized. But it is a fantastic film. And that was all of the popular ones that people were talking about. Now, these ones are my personal favorites, because I knew it was about the Trojan horse, but I didn't know how little we would know about the Trojan horse, and then how much other Korea would get. The return of Odysseus to Ithaca, I think, is the biggest climax we've seen in 2026. This climax was so grounded. It was an amazing masterclass in suspense of Odysseus' re-entering into his home in disguise, and the famous archery challenge and subsequent slaughter of the suitors is executed with such brutal, unflinching precision, emphasizing the cold brutality of his vengeance over heroic triumph. That, I think, is an amazing. He's a hero and did all of that, and we still think of him as a hero. What does that tell you for a film like this? What makes it unforgettable is the quiet, heartbreaking aftermath, where the film questions whether 2 decades of war and suffering actually allow a man to truly return home. Now, this whole film revolves around Zeus's law about, you treat people the way you want to be treated in terms of hospitality, and I think I completely agree with that. And he did not. Therefore, he got exiled. And also you let beggars in because they might be a god in disguise, and you might have a god's eyes, Athena's eyes, all of that. It all comes into play, and it all kind of builds up into the aftermath of this very scene, so the structure is brilliant. Now, the next scene, and the final scene I'll talk about before we get onto all the logistical stuff, is the story of the fall of Troy. Now, when I was younger, I think in year 6 or something like that, you do learn a bit about the Trojan War. Or I think it might be you just started secondary. You learn about the Trojan War before in primary school or something. But you don't realize how, like, well, the modern warfare of like for the fall of Troy is horrendous. It is a sad story. Framed from like the haunting non-linear flashback at the fall of Troy showcases the sheer carnage of the Trojan horse, and that was a weird strategy, I just want to point out, with devastating historical realism as well. Nolan draws striking parallels between the deceptive victory of Troy and the catastrophic horrors of the modern warfare, as I said, and it treats the city's destruction as a tragic turning point rather than a glorious win, and that is where I think this film did it right. It was the victory, but it was actually a loss for everyone in the long run. It was anchored by Matt Damon's guilt-ridden performance at the city burning, and it serves as the emotional foundation for Odysseus' 10-year struggle for redemption. Absolute cinema. I would argue this is maybe #1 film of the year. I honestly do. I want to compare this to my other favorite Christopher Nolan film, Oppenheimer. I love Oppenheimer. Now, these are technically the same type of genre, just very different, obviously different time periods. Now, while Oppenheimer relies on claustrophobic, room-filling tension and psychological dread to examine the burden, obviously, the devastating human power, the Odyssey projects these same thematic, like, anxieties onto a sweeping, mythical canvas of practical spectacle. Technically, they are the same, depend on what you believe. Both films showcase Christopher Nolan's obsession with brilliant, flawed men who are utterly consumed by guilt over the catastrophic fallout of their strategic triumphs during war. One was less than a century ago, one was I don't know how many years ago, but ultimately where Oppenheimer captures the terrifying birth of obviously the atomic age, the nuclear bomb, the age in quiet courtrooms and laboratories, don't know what happened to my mouth there, the Odyssey strips its hero bare against the relentless, unforgiving forces of nature and fate. That's why I think the Odyssey overtakes that. Now, I loved Oppenheimer. I really did. I don't know why, I just love Oppenheimer. It might be all the actors. I like Cillian Murphy, Peaky Blinders, love all that shit. But the Odyssey is something else. I'm sorry. It just takes it. I would even argue Oppenheimer went, and then Odyssey went, wee. It's so good. Now, other reviews. I have not seen a bad review. If there is a bad review, I might go and lose some shit. The Odyssey, right, IGN said the Odyssey's greatest success is that it actually feels like an epic poem it's based on. Yes, correct. Odysseus' journey home feels like embarking on it for the first time, even if it isn't. Yep, honestly, I was head and hands the second time, so the first time I watched it by myself, and then the other time I watched it with my parents. They were like, I just sat there like, I want to see what them two think. I was more like, yes, so you gonna have a fit or not? This is what weirded me out. Father, sitting this here, he was just like, Mother, that's funny. No, I literally looked at her and I said, "What is wrong with you?" And it was literally during the pig transformation and the Cyclops one. The Guardian said Nolan is brilliant at recreating one aspect of the original poem, its completed structure, but I see a but. But his Odysseus, as filtered through Matt Damon's performance, is a grim and agonized figure, not the... I can't say that word. Not because of that. I can't read. Rhetorically able, charming liar of the poem. That made no sense to me, so I'm just gonna leave it. I heard a but the rest of it just got too much for my brain. Now, last bit I want to talk about is what else can we expect from Christopher Nolan. Following the massive technological and narrative gamble that was The Odyssey, audiences can now expect Christopher Nolan to continue pushing the boundaries of large format cinema. By the way, just want to point this out. I do believe they are showing the Odyssey in 4DX, wherever you are. I don't recommend that. If you want to feel like you have levitated from your seat, go and watch it in IMAX. Because, obviously, 4DX as well, the film is small. In IMAX, I think I ended up in one side of the cinema, ended up on the other one at the end. The sound waves bash against each other, and that bash of shockwaves just goes down. That is genuine physics, I think. And you hear everything, your chairs literally wiggle as well. It's all mental. But I think Christopher Nolan wants to feed more into that as well. Regardless of whether he tackles a high concept original sci-fi puzzle or another, obviously, historical adaptation, he has said that he wants to do a horror film. Now, horror films I'm slightly getting better with in cinemas. Honestly, you tell me it's a horror film, I'll still go and watch it. It's Christopher Nolan, I really don't care. But it's Christopher Nolan, yeah, go have that. Overall review, I think I've said it about 50 times now, it's a phenomenal film. Please go and see it. Don't watch it on any streaming service. You please watch it in IMAX. I will not be surprised if this is the film they bring back often in cinemas, because it was so popular. Both times I've seen it. The second time, both times, right, okay, I did plan to go and see it a third time, and this is actually the reason why I didn't. First time, I went at 9 AM in the morning. The film started at 9:15 in the morning. I wake up at 7. Yeah. Started at 9:15, ended at midday. I was struggling to get a seat at 9:15 in the morning. No one goes to a mall at that time in the morning to go and see a film except me. I was convinced I was the only person insane enough to do that, but clearly not. Following week, exact same time, there was not a single free seat left. First time was actually okay because I was going by myself. The other time we had booked in advance and there was not a single seat free. Following week, I was like, oh, Spider-Man. Alright, I'll go and see it a couple days after. Didn't, mainly because every single seat was full. Every single seat was full. It was amazing. But honestly, ultimately the Odyssey may not follow a traditional light-hearted fantasy template, and I'm so glad that's not the case. But Christopher Nolan's breathtaking practical skill and Matt Damon's haunting, deeply human performance deliver a towering cinematic epic that honors Homer's legend like never before. I've seen other films and its adaptation. Nothing can step to this. But without further ado, folks, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe and comment what else you would like to see on this channel. And I do apologize for the length of this video. However, it was a long-ass film. But I hope you have an amazing day as always, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.